Alright, hey everyone, this is LS, and this is the Afreeca Freaks versus G2 Esports Worlds Group Stages, and this is going to be another speed VOD review. Urgot, Aurelia, and Akali banned away by Afreeca Freaks, and it looks like they're actually locking in Alistar as a first pick. So I don't really know what's going on inside of the scrims or what's happened in recent weeks, but I was expecting to see more Kai'Sa priority, or actually just more ADC priority in general. And then obviously you have the flips of Aatrox and Urgot, so you got that going on for you. G2 Esports now hovering the Rakan. They could also just go with Jakan here, so they can lock in Xayah. They can lock in Xayah if they want to. Although I do think that people on Twitter were talking about Hjarnen's Heimerdinger. So even though I know the result of the game, I don't know what ends up unfolding inside of it. So let's see. Xayah is called Jaya in Korean, so when you see them both together, you call it Jakan. Every time I say that, I think of Wakanda. I don't know why. But anyways, Talia is now being hovered by Afreeca. This is going to be exciting for me. I actually haven't watched that much Heimer, so I don't know what the hype around it is. Oh, the speed's slow, isn't it? I'm sorry. All right. Kai'Sa being locked in for Afreeca. I already really like Afreeca's team composition. The only thing that obviously I'm unsure about is the Heimerdinger. It's sort of like it's the oddball where I can't really account for it because I don't have any images in my mind of seeing it team fight or seeing what it does or understanding fully how it operates. So it's sort of like I'm actually being taken by a surprise, I guess, inside of the draft because it's very difficult for me to assess outside of like a surface level analysis of what I think the champion actually does. Vel'Koz being banned away, I think that's actually quite good because the long range that Vel'Koz offers, I think, can actually be problematic with how G2 is drafted thus far. And now a Syndra is actually being... Syndra's being locked in. I don't know if the Camille is top lane. I guess, obviously, the Camille can be flexed into the jungle. But I don't know why you picked the Syndra so early. We talked about earlier how, you know, we saw, what was it, Vitality utilize the Echo. I think that the Echo is really good here because Afreeca is on blue side, so blue side 1-3-1s are inherently stronger than red side 1-3-1s. And instead, actually, Afreeca locks in the Scion. Urgot and Aatrox are banned away. They take the Scion, and now they have the Zoe. So this is a very Korean-esque team composition. They have a lot of scaling. They have a lot of flexibility inside of their kit. And so now let's just talk about what the two team comps want to do. So it looks like... Oh, hold on. Let me just confirm if that's Camille jungler or Camille top. I think it's at 20 seconds. They have to swap, right? The clicking's annoying. I'm sorry. The Korean player behind me. I'm super sorry. I'll try to make sure to do VOD reviews when no one's playing in the room in future VOD reviews. Oh, okay. So it is actually Camille top. So let's talk about some stuff. So Zoe is a champion that doesn't really tend to slow down, but for the most part ends up fighting almost identically to when she has 3 items as she will when she has 6. So even though she doesn't slow down, and the reason that she doesn't slow down is because the nature of her poke. You know, the poke is obviously always going to be valuable with whatever little bits of damage that she can get, and then obviously CDR and whatever else. Kai'Sa doesn't slow down, Zoe doesn't slow down, Talia does not slow down, and then Sion. I mean, Sion basically fights as the same champion, but his durability and what he offers for the other 3 champions makes it so that even though typically he slows down as a champion, in this case he's not going to. And then obviously Alistar, he's still useful at like 2 items and then a little bit at 3 items. On the flip side for G2 Esports, the Syndra starts to slow down at a certain point. The Camille doesn't actually slow down, so they have that going for them. The Gragas does slow down after about 2 items. Now this is the question mark for me because I actually don't know enough about Heimerdinger. My thought, or my belief, is that he doesn't slow down. My belief is that he keeps scaling because of the nature of his kit and because of the amount of damage that he dishes out and because of how much utility is inside of his kit. And then obviously Rakan is basically in the same boat as Alistar, where they're effectively the same champion. So what I'm looking at here is Gragas, if he falls behind in tempo, tempo, then everything's just going to be a nightmare. The thing that Afreeca Freaks has going for them is that they have the late game scaling, but the problem is that unlike in that Gen G game that we talked about, that square where they can just turtle it and prevent the opponents from getting the Baron, Zoe can play behind the safe vicinity of her blue side and then poke the opponents as they're trying to set up Baron as they posture for it. The difference here is that there's a Heimerdinger. And not only is there a Heimerdinger, but there's also a Syndra, which means that the mid inhibitor and the bottom inhibitor sieges and pushes are extremely scary for Afreeca to try to stop. So I don't think that they actually have the luxury of turtling this. So what we're probably looking at for Afreeca is any sort of 2 to 3 item wake-ups that need to establish them some sort of a map priority. And even though they still have scaling inside of their team composition, that's not the route that they can go, where they just have the luxury, again, to turtle it. And then if you're G2, if you end up getting Syndra ahead, or if you actually get Heimerdinger ahead, I think that Afreeca Freaks' team composition, again, because they don't have the luxury to fall back to this in the later stages of the game, G2's comp is actually much scarier than Afreeca's. And because they have the ability to get out of control in top lane, they have the ability to get out of control in mid lane, they have the ability to get out of control in bottom lane. The other issue is that these champions need time to stabilize, with the exception of Taliyah. Taliyah is a little bit obnoxious. Zoe can have no items and still be effective, but against these champions, that's not going to be the case. So if Heimerdinger or Syndra ends up accelerating really fast early on, Kai'Sa and Zoe won't have time to stabilize, and then because of the nature of Heimerdinger and the way that he offers poke and utility and sieges and whatnot, Taliyah's wave clear and Taliyah's ability to threaten stuff, even when behind economically, is not going to be relevant. And then obviously the Gragas and the Camille are just going to most likely get out of hand, and G2 Esports is even going to have 1-3-1s available to them on a color that, you know, we talked about many times tonight in this stream, is typically weaker on red side. So that's what we're looking at to see happen, and we'll see what ends up actually happening inside of the game. Okay. All right, waiting for the game to start. We'll see if we have another 5-point opening from the Korean team. And it looks like that is going to be the case. 5-point opening, we have a Ghost Poro being put down, and a 5-point opening as well from G2. Also should be noted, this VOD review might be compromised a little bit because I am under a little bit of a pressure, Oh, this is a really cute leash with Heimerdinger. This is actually really, really, really cute. Wow, Jankos is going to get level 3 so quickly. It's gonna, wow, okay. This is actually really gross. So it is Taliyah. Taliyah is one of the fastest and most mobile junglers in the game, so I think that if this was another jungler, this type of a leash is even scarier because of how quickly it accelerates Gragas. You can see Gragas is already on that Scuttle Crab, and now because Syndra has priority in mid lane, Gragas can actually just path through mid lane, go to the Scuttle Crab, and meet Taliyah there. And this is a spot Taliyah usually doesn't find herself in. She usually doesn't find herself on the back foot inside of the jungle. And so this is actually very uncomfortable for Taliyah, and this is exactly what G2 wants to do. So, so far I've watched what? I've watched 3 or 4 games of Worlds, and Jankos has had the best. Well, G2 has had the best jungle opening out of all the games that I've seen. And jungle openings are quite rare when you see them. Okay, well, you know what? Fuck me. Son of a bitch. What are they doing? Ah, man. Completely unnecessary. Because Jankos was so far ahead. Look at what's happening here, okay? Jankos, he got the Scuttle Crab. He knows that Taliyah doesn't have these camps, right? He knows Taliyah doesn't have these camps. So now all that Jankos has to do is he can just go like this. right? And then he could even recall, and then off the, or actually, no, he probably doesn't want to recall. He probably wants to path back into the right-hand side. He can just go like this, right? And then recall. And then off the recall, he has rubber banded camps, and this is exactly where Talia's go because Talia only has one camp. So if Jankos just goes like this, recall, boink, 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 match, counter, right? Match, counter, and then Jankos goes like this. Or Jankos goes like this. Right? Or Jankos could just do something like this into recall into this. This would be very, very clever. Because what can end up happening here is if Syndra maintains priority and pressure, then Syndra can come in with Jankos, steal away the Wraiths, and then you know that Talia is forced to go to her Wolves and then ultimately her Gromp, and Jankos backs up and eats his Wolves, his Gromp, and then stand by. Or what Jankos does is he does Gromp into Wolves, transitions into the left-hand side, and then at this point he's going to have rubber banding camps coming up on the left-hand side, and Talia is forced to be on the left-hand side of the map. So no matter what, I hate Jankos' follow-up routes after his opening. Dick Strong stream. Okay. Alright. And so now Talia is getting away with stuff that Talia should not be allowed to get away with. Jankos is coming in here. And he sees Spirit, but Spirit's gonna end up getting all of his camps. And you can see Jankos also has... Oh, he just missed that smite on that Skull Crab. Yeah, alright, so G2 is actually botching their follow-up jungle, and Talia's actually being allowed to recover in a way that shouldn't be happening. There was definitely a way to 2-level Talia this game. And there was a way to just put her in the ground and make it so that Perks and Hjarnan and Wonder would just basically have free lanes on their own. And I think that's exactly what they would have wanted. So I really don't like how G2 is playing thus far. Yeah, Jankos is playing really bad after that opening. After that opening, he's playing really, really, really bad. His pathing all sucks. Okay. Now at this point, the game is semi-stable. Afreeca has a little bit of a gold lead, but that, again, it doesn't really matter all that much. We have to wait for more to unfold. The gold lead is so minuscule at this point in the game that it doesn't actually equate to anything. Mountain Drake's the first dragon of the game, which is actually a dragon that I think G2 wants more than Infernal Drake. And the reason that I say that is because Heimerdinger offers the Baron cheese plays, and Heimerdinger's sieges and everything. It just ties in so perfectly. I think Mountain Drake is actually better than Infernal in almost every scenario for G2 here. So it's really good that they rolled it, and they can try to make a play when Zoe and Talia are off tempo together to coordinate and get the dragon. Okay, so they're just clearing out vision. Spirit's down in bottom lane. They know that Jankos is most likely getting his red, but it doesn't look like they're going to be actually able to do anything. And we've seen Korean teams doing this quite a few times now, where they do these plays that require the opponents to make mistakes. And often you hear me criticize NA and EU teams for doing such things, and I feel like the Korean teams are doing it a little bit more than I'm used to seeing when I watch them inside of the LCK. And I do wonder if it has to do with the fact they're playing against a Western team, and they're being a little bit more disrespectful than they should. Keen ends up backing up, and okay, nothing really happening there. Wonder does have a nice little CS lead up in top lane, and the game is actually just going very slow. I'm so sorry, Twitch chat, that the game is actually going as slow as it is. And I'm so sorry that the jungler pathing from Jankos is as bad as it is, because I feel like it's actually detracting away from the game. Talia's getting away with stuff consistently, even at this point. The way that the jungle matchup really is, Spirit is hard pressed to make anything happen actually against the Camille, and then also Spirit is hard pressed to make anything happen against the Heimerdinger just because of the nature of him. It's very, very difficult to coordinate ganks. So what ends up happening is you have Spirit who's just going to be riding around the river, and he's just going to be match ganking or keeping river priority, and then just allowing his laners to scale, and then what we're expecting to see is mid-game team fights based around Dragon or Herald. And that's when Spark should start to fly. The clicking is the Korean Challenger player behind me. I will make sure that for future VOD reviews, I will do it at a time where no one is in the room, so. Okay. So Afreeca actually devoted quite a lot to this, and Wonder did not come down, so now Wonder should actually be able to get this turret up in top, and Afreeca is really far behind off of that. That's not something that they want to have happen, because G2 is the team that, again, wants to accelerate. Sion's actually going to ult back up to top, and Wonder is just going to say that he doesn't actually want to pressure for turret damage, so he recalls. But no matter what, this is eventually going to translate into top tier 1 turret going down much earlier than Afreeca is going to be able to get the top tier 1 turret. So I think that G2 is actually in a fantastic spot right now. And I think that things are not going for them the way that they should have. They should have been more even than they are right now. And even though the gold advantage at the top would suggest that the Afreeca is ahead, they're not really ahead when you consider how the map movements and what the state of the turrets are across the map. You have to factor that in. Okay. So now you can see that Afreeca, again, trying to make something happen. And right now Spirit doesn't actually have any camps to go to, so it's not actually that bad. Wonder finally starting to shove out the lane a little bit. And then he runs back into Sion. Everything's just very, very slow. We have a very even gold score, but the real story is the turret HPs across the map, because that's the real important point. Because we talked about earlier on inside of the champ select what it is that G2 wants to do. Once the map gets opened up and Heimer can start moving around, that's when Afreeca starts having a lot of problems. Especially because Afreeca doesn't have any split push utility against this team. They can't allow the game to just keep being stagnant like this. Maybe Afreeca is thinking that they can do that, and they can allow Kuro to carry with some Zoe bubbles later on, picking off members of G2, and they'll just play a safe, stable game like that. But I don't think that that's the game plan that they should be wanting to take, and I think that if G2 is like a team like Griffin or something, I would actually be saying that the game is really, really, really bad for Afreeca. So a little bit, maybe not like Korean bias, but I do give Afreeca a benefit of the doubt in mechanical fights than over G2. I don't know what that Sion is, but Sion's now down here in bottom. Oh, they didn't know. They knew that the ultimate was happening because of the noise. Now they send Heimer top lane. I actually really like this. So they trade turrets. Heimerdinger is going to actually end up getting the first turret. He's going to get a lot of solo XP and a lot of solo gold. And now he's going to end up recalling. And I don't know what the fuck Afreeca is doing. What? You have 5 members down in bottom. What? Just do the dragon. You have 5 members in bottom with the Sion. One of the primary carry sources is not there. And all, like, so again, G2 needs a Mountain Drake, right? G2, even if Afreeca invests time into getting that mountain, what ends up happening as a byproduct is that mid, top, and bottom lane all shove into Afreeca, which is fine. So all 3 of those lanes shove into Afreeca, and then what ends up happening is maybe G2, they take their top tier 1 turret, and then they look to try to capitalize on Herald. And even if they try to go to Herald, it's not going to be possible because Afreeca is going to be able to reset in time because Heimerdinger has to reset. So Afreeca with some really, really poor rotations so far. And now it looks like they're going to end up picking up a Mountain Drake because G2 is not prioritizing it, which I don't know why they're not prioritizing it. They had other opportunities in the game to capitalize on it, but they weren't able to do so because of Jankos' jungle pathings. Someone in Twitch chat is asking, why is Kai'Sa going AP? I actually think that Kai'Sa going AP is fine here. because I think that the poke and the way the AP Kaisa functions, let me just rewind for a second. I think the way that the poke and the way the AP Kaisa functions is more important than having AD Kaisa against G2's team composition, because you don't want to be in close proximity to the Camille, the Syndra, or the Heimerdinger. And I think that just basically being some sort of like a pseudo poke comp, no, not really pseudo, but a poke comp with the Zoe Kaisa and the Talia is actually more valuable, because it lets you fight fire with fire. And so right here, you can see Kuro is really insistent on trying to hold the turret, but there's no universe in which you can hold the turret. And you can see that Afreeca is just really, really off tempo, and they're off beat with trying to handle G2's rotations. So this is nice play by G2 for moving around the map. And this is the stuff that I thought that Afreeca would have difficulty handling with Heimer map rotations. Sort of reminds me of Caitlyn way back in the day, but I think that it's infinitely more oppressive than a Caitlyn is, just because it feels more difficult to actually resist against. At least if you get onto a Caitlyn, then she's dead, but if you get onto an Heimer, he's casting Zanya's, and then you're dealing with this massive turret in your face. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Heimerdinger can 1v2, unlike Caitlyn. So that's where some of the oppressiveness comes in. So this is very similar to trying to fight back against a Caitlyn, except you don't have the luxury of just diving on her and trying to hold her down. So Perks is running away right now. Afreeca's trying to make something happen. Heimerdinger up in top lane. Second core item now completed for Syndra. So Afreeca, even though they have the Mountain Drake and another Mountain Drake is spawning, I'm still saying that they're really far behind. The team composition is just so ugly, although it looks like they end up picking up a kill onto Wonder there. And I don't think that had to happen. I think Wonder could have just done stuff different. Like, he doesn't actually need to get this tier 1 turret right now. It's not imperative that he gets it. He already has this Trinity Force. Other members on his team are recalling with their second core items. And the game is going to hit a state where Afreeca already doesn't have the speed necessary to keep up with the Heimerdinger and the Camille pressure that can be exerted across multiple lanes. So I think that Wonder trying to get the bottom tier 1 turret's really bad. Ends up dying there, and they end up getting the ultimate out of Tushin. And then they end up picking up the kill onto Kuro, and that should actually, well... Now, if G2 had Mountain Drake, this would be a 100% free Baron. I'm pretty sure, but they don't have it, and so now Afreeca is trying to push up in mid lane for absolutely no reason, and now G2 is moving over to the left-hand side. And again, Heimerdinger is one of the scariest champions when it comes to getting Barons, so even though Wonder goes down here, they're showing on the replay. They got the ultimate out of Tushin, and you can see Wadded comes all the way in there, and then they end up picking up the kill with the Gragas cask, so... things are going okay. Again, gold score at the top does not indicate how far behind Afreeca actually is. Afreeca is so far behind right now, it's not even funny. Assuming that you allow the game to play out naturally. Now you can see that Keen really not going to be able to keep up with the Camille split push the longer that the game ends up going on. And then because of the way that the Heimer turrets function and Afreeca's team composition, it's so hard for them to actually advance out onto the map. You can see that they're trying to get the Baron. They end up stopping it, but this is something that Afreeca is going to have to invest blue trinkets in. I would like to see actually Afreeca swap to 3 blue trinket if they haven't already, because I can't see the items right now. I wish I was casting too. I feel you, Kestrel. Mountain Drake ends up getting picked up by Wonder. This is something that definitely shouldn't have been allowed by Afreeca, but obviously they couldn't really stop it at this point in time. Infernal Drake coming up next. G2 is just in a super, super fantastic spot, because you can see that even when Kaisa and Zoe and Talia are hitting these items that we talked about inside of the pick and ban, they're not able to do anything because they've constantly been behind tempo. And so it doesn't matter that they're seeing the items that they want to see and they're getting there without anything too catastrophic happening. It's like just going second in a card game. If you ever played a TCG or something and you're playing an identical matchup but you lost the die roll, that's what it feels like for Afreeca right now. is they're playing like control versus aggro, but they lost the die roll. So even though they're seeing the same items and they're getting there and nothing like horrendous is happening, just being that 1 mana or land drop behind is causing so many problems for them, and G2 is just getting so much value. Wonder ends up getting the inhibitor. So this is the best play I've seen out of a Western team in so long. This is the best map movements that I have seen out of a Western team in so long. This is very, very clean. I'm impressed. I haven't been impressed with a Western team in a long time. They're taking it slow. They're knowing when to back off. Their management of the lanes are quite okay. Like, Jankos' jungling was, don't get me wrong, it was fucking atrocious for, you know, the early into mid-game transition. It was fucking horrendous, right? Everything else thus far has been quite good. Everything else has been quite good. I think that they're going to end up picking up the Baron here. Yeah, Afreeca's not in time to stop it. And Afreeca's just sort of rolling over. And I think that this composition's a little bit too ballsy. With how they're trying to play it. And again, Talia did fall behind early, but then Talia got away with a lot of stuff that she shouldn't have. And so Spirit should have been able to salvage something. But he chose, like, it looked like Afreeca was content with saying, okay, we're just going to take this to the mid game and then we're going to try to outplay you. But G2, you know, being given that free pass isn't fucking up the way that Vitality did. Vitality got to the same exact stage in a game where real true macro skill and team coordination and stuff becomes so crucial to making that team composition flourish the way that it's supposed to, and they dropped the ball. Team Liquid can't get there in the first place. G2 is the first team that has that I've seen in a while get to that stage, and then they're executing upon it very clean. This is very good. Actually, I really like this. This is a game that I enjoy watching. This is a game that you have cheese and wine to. Okay? This is nice. I know it's very boring probably for chat. And there's like stuff that there's definitely refinements that G2 can do, but I think that the overall consensus is that it's important to acknowledge that Afreeca was intentionally doing bad things for safe reasons, and that G2 wasn't dropping the ball. They were trying to give G2 the opportunity to drop the ball. And so right now, here's one complaint that I do have where the lanes... Oh, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Yeah, because Wonder's down in bottom lane. Lanes could be coordinated a little bit better, but it doesn't... Like, see, these are things that are, like, nitpicky, and it's stuff that I don't have the energy to talk about in the very final VOD review, and I'm so sorry. But it doesn't really seem like it's going to matter. The Heimerdinger... The overall team composition from G2 is just way too oppressive, and the Heimerdinger is such a nice thorn in Afreeca's side. And it's interesting that they showed it early, right? They show the Heimerdinger early, and Afreeca doesn't seem to actually have a real way of dealing with it. And I think that's a problem, especially because I would imagine that they had prepared for, you know, what if Heimerdinger shows up. So if we go back into the draft and we talk about, like, what does Afreeca try to do different, I think that you do not just handshake the Scion. I think, again, I think that their notion of trying to fight fire with fire is good. But I think that like fight fire with fire here. I think that you keep fighting fire with fire all across the board. So I don't like the Scion, and then I think that the Zoe should have been different as well. Now the thing is that we talked about like Echo into the Syndra. The dilemma is that if Echo ends up getting behind with the other champions that you do have, and Heimerdinger has tempo, then you're never going to salvage that tempo. So Echo is also a little bit problematic. You can't really go Fizz because Syndra and Heimerdinger will have Zanyas, and so like you just keep going down a list of available mid lane champions that you can actually pick. Galio is banned away Twitch chat. I do think that the Vel'Koz is really, really good. I'm blanking on champions. I think that the top lane pick is really problematic. I really hate the tank. I advocate fighting fire with fire. So even if they don't know if the Camille is top or jungle yet, I still think that they have to pick something else. Xerath actually, I mean, Xerath is really weird. I'm making an effort to not say Xerath. Xerath isn't bad here. Xerath is quite good. The one argument that you could make is the Camille can be problematic for him. But Xerath is actually really good. I do think that he's really, really good. Aurelia is absolutely terrible here. Cassiopeia is also terrible here. So you can't pick any of those. The options in mid are semi-limited. I guess another champ... Oh, you can't really pick Azir here either. So the real problems for Afreeca is these two things. Now, if we flip this and G2 is Griffin, then this is even scarier. But I like G2's game plan. I like their draft. I like how they played it. I like how they moved around Heimer. It was very, very clean to watch. It was like watching a very clean Caitlyn move around the map. And again, out of all the Western teams that I've watched so far, and in recent times, G2 has played the best that I can ever recall seeing. So that was really good. So I think that is pretty much it for this VOD review.